Hey guys, it's your friend Kelly Dale. We have just a few minutes before class starts, so we are going to wait and let everybody kind of get in who is going to be live today and start getting their stuff together. Hope that you are having a good day so far. It is beautiful here today. Absolutely beautiful. The weather is wonderful. So I decided to leave our front door open, and now I'm all stopped up again. You would think with all that rain we had the other day that would not be a problem, but bless my heart, it's a major issue with me this year. I don't know what's going on. So, oh well. But we are going to get started. Remember that to be able to chat or ask questions, you need to make sure that you are logged into your YouTube account, because that is how you chat with other people in the class and you ask any questions that you may have. So we have about 4 minutes and we're going to jump in and get started. I really hope that you printed your patterns. You should have got an email with these patterns yesterday, so make sure you've got both of your patterns printed out so we can talk about those. Hey Tammy, hey Brenda, and I seen Jan Smith is here as well, so fantastic. I'm so glad to hear it. I'm gonna move the camera back just a little if I can. Okay. Okay, so we're going to kind of jump ahead and we're going to go ahead and get started a little bit. I want to leave us plenty of time to do this today because there's a lot we got to go over and a lot we've got to cover. So like I said, in your email yesterday, you got 2 patterns. So the original bracelet, which is a little bit wider, and let me actually grab my ruler and I'll measure it for you. Okay, so this bracelet is 1 inch wide. Okay, so that's kind of how you'll know the width of the original bracelet. So the original bracelet pattern is this one. In your kit, if you want to do the original pattern, you are going to follow this scheme, and they are labeled actually in your kit exactly how they will be on here. So this is the kit that you should have gotten, and it has all of your colors actually listed on it. So like this is color H, okay? So you will put them in order A through H just like you normally would. And that is gonna be for this pattern. Now, if you choose to do a skinnier version of the pattern, so the other one, it says skinny version or skinny, that means it's a smaller version. So you can kind of see here the difference in the 2 versions in the widths, okay? If you do this one, your numbers change. So what that means is you will not go by the number that is on your kit bag, okay? So you will not go by this number. You will need to look at how they're set up here because they're set up differently, okay? So that's the first major thing you need to pay attention to. Oh, I'm sorry, my nose is itching. Is which one you want to do, because that is going to depend on how you put your beads in order for your project. So that's your first thing. And I'm going to give you just a minute or 2 to kind of get set up there. So decide which one you want to do and go ahead and lay your beads out. Now, it's really important if you don't have, you know, like a little thing like this or some way to keep up with your colors, that you make sure to write your A, B, C, D, E, whatever out so that you can actually keep up with it. Now, for me, honestly, for me, instead of saying like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, it's easier for me to actually go by the not the word chart, but the bead chart, because all I have to do is say, I'm going to pick up A, B, C, you know, or green, yellow, blue, purple, and not really say, you know, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It's just easier for me that way. You can follow either pattern that you want. You can follow the word chart or you can follow the bead chart. So on your original pattern, well, really for both of these, we are going to be starting in the middle and working our way up to one end. We do that because we have to decrease. Now, honestly, if you wanted to, you could just do like 4 or 5 rows and do a decrease. But it's simpler just to start in the middle, work your way up, and then do the other side of it. If you did the feather class with me a few weeks ago, here in one of the e-classes, then you remember we started in the middle. Well, this is going to be the same way. It's going to help with sizing as well. People in my class this morning were kind of freaking out. They were like, well, what if I didn't end it exactly, exactly centered like it needs to be? And that's totally okay. These rows or this pattern is a repetitive pattern. So as we go through, I will show you those repetitions so it's a little bit easier to kind of figure out. On page 3 of the original pattern, it says if you are making this bracelet with the decreases on the end. So what that means is if you don't want to make this with the decreases, you can 100% just loom this as a straight bracelet. That's not a problem. But if you're doing it with the decreases, it's easiest to start in the middle of the bracelet. This will help you get the correct sizing. The middle row is highlighted in yellow on this page. So on page 3, if you are going to follow along with me on the wider version, I have outlined that whole row in yellow. Okay, so that row is yellow. Let me look and I will tell you on the word chart. If you're going to follow the word chart, I will tell you, I think it's row 33, but let me double check. Yeah, row 33. So if you are starting on the bead chart, you are going to start here. If you are starting on the word chart on this one, you are going to start on row 33. Okay, so we'll start on 33 and work our way up. And then most people are not going to need all of that length. So you will stop when you feel that you need to stop. Each diamond is going to take a little over 1 inch. The decreases on each end are going to take up about a 1/2 inch. Oof. Goodness gracious. For my example, I normally wear between a 7 and a 7.25. I really like a 7.25. So the bead work on mine is just under 6.5 inches, because then you're going to need about 1 inch to 1.5 inches for your button and your button loop. All right, so you want to pay attention to that. For me, I pretty much know that I have 5 centered diamonds. That's going to take, again, a little over 1 inch for each diamond, and then another 1/2 inch. So I have between that 6 to 6.5 inches of actual finished beadwork. The good thing is this is a flat piece. It's not a bumpy piece. It's not made with big beads. So when you put your ruler up against your beadwork, you will know exactly how many inches of beadwork you have and how many you need and all of that good stuff. So don't worry too much about, am I in the exact right spot to make a decrease? Because you don't need to really worry about that point. So basically what we're using today is we are using our Delica beads. So again, your kit came with all of them nicely packaged like this. We are using 24 inches of a 1.5 millimeter Greek leather. So Greek leather is a little bit different from imitation leather or even natural leather. The Greek leather is a natural leather, but it's very soft. It's very supple. It's a very high-end leather, so it's a little bit more expensive than, say, your regular leather cord or your imitation cord, but you will get the best results out of it, especially for this specific bracelet. So just keep that in mind. We have a button. In your kit, you're going to use a size 12 or a 10 beading needle. Either one is up to you. And I'm going to use some 6-pound fire line. Now, you can use whatever you're comfortable with. I had a girl in class this morning, and she used her 6-pound to warp with, which is our up and down threads. And then she used 1G to do her weft threads, which is our side to side threads. So it's completely up to you. I like fire line for these projects, but like I said, completely up to you. So here we go. I hope you're ready to learn and get started. The thick version. Okay, Libby, we will go over that. We haven't worked anything up yet, so we are good. We will go over how to do all that. So, oh, and I see Ruth is here. Ruth, I got to have lunch with Kathy the other day. So, it was, and I heard a little bit about you. So it was nice to learn a little bit more about you. But let's see. This bracelet is 17 beads wide. So if you flip it over, you count your beads, you have 17 beads across. So you will need to warp your loom with 18 threads. Okay, now that's if you're making this as a regular bracelet. If you're gonna put the leather on the sides like I did, you will use the first warp and the last warp for leather. Okay, so what that means is even though I need 18 warps for this one, I'm actually only going to warp it with my thread for 16, okay? Because I'm taking off 2 because my first and my last are actually going to be leather. So don't let that confuse you whatsoever. We will go over it and I'll show you step by step how to do it. So the skinny one, if you're going to do the skinny bracelet, it is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. It's 11 beads wide. So that means we have to have 12 warps. But the only thing is, remember, the first and last warp that we do is going to be leather. So we're actually only going to have to warp it with 10 threads. All right, so don't let it confuse you. I promise we will do this step by step. So as of right now, you guys should have your beads laid out and you should have chosen which pattern you're going to do. So for me, I'm actually going to warp up the smaller version today because I want to actually have one finished to show you. So the Jewel Loom has 2 versions of it. Oh, it has the Jewel Loom like this. This is the normal version. And they have a brand new version called the Baby Loom, the Baby Jewel Loom. So it's a good bit of a size difference. It's about half the size here. So that's going to be your size difference. They made this baby one for, they made this baby one for pendants and earrings and things like that. And over the next few months, I am going to be using this one. I started an earring the other day and I thought, oh my gosh, this would be so cute to show on. And then I screwed the earring up because it's decreases on each end as well. So I thought, Lord help me, Jesus. So I'm actually going to warp this one up because I want to have something finished to show you guys. Especially on the decreases, okay? But we're going to be using the big one today. So your big one, if you've never used this loom before, it comes flat, completely flat. And you'll notice, you're supposed to, everybody but Tammy, you have a metal bar in your kit, okay? It's this little metal piece right here. So what you do is your bar has a little crook on each end of it. And we take and we put the bar into one side here, just like this. And I take and I set it down on my table and I bend it, the loom towards me. And then you clip the piece here into the top. So it's a hard clip. When you push it in there, you really got to push it and get it down in there. So that is how you set your loom up. What's so nice about this loom is you can take that bar out and it stores flat. So that's really, really nice. If by some chance you don't have the Jewel Loom, or after using this Jewel Loom today, you're like, I don't like this loom, I want to go back to my Rick's loom or whatever, that's completely fine. You can use a normal loom as well. It's just with this project, I found it easiest to do on this loom, okay? If you are using like a Rick's loom or any other type loom, when you go to put the leather on there, you're going to need some clips to be able to clip it to your loom, like to your bars on the end. So it sets up a little differently, but it's going to be a lot the same way. So you want your bar in there. You want it to be just like this. You want it to be a boat. That's how we're going to start today. So I'm going to flip my camera around. If you get motion sickness, please look away for just a minute while we get it reset up. Okay. Here we go. Okay. Let me make sure. All right, and let me take the phone off the hook. I forgot to do that. Okay, here we go. So you can see I already have my beads laid out. I have my A through H laid out and ready to go because I am doing this skinnier version. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our loom. So if you'll notice on your loom, it has two of these knobs here on each end. The baby loom has two knobs as well. It's got two little babies. So let me just clip this little piece here from where I was playing with that one the other day. For this bracelet to work out the best, we need to loom it here in the center of the loom. So you've got your bar here, and we need to try and loom it here in the center. So this is what I told the people who took my class the last time. One of the easiest ways, especially if you've never loomed with this loom before, is you want to, wherever you start, we want to make sure that we start at the same slots on each side. So I'm going to come up and I'm going to come somewhere here right off to the side and I'm going to mark. Okay, so I'm just going to put a mark on a little section right here. And I'm just using a Sharpie marker. And now I'm going to use like some sort of pointer or something like that to count the little grooves. So I'm counting these inside grooves here. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So this is in the 18th groove. So I'm going to come down here on this side. Okay, so same side, and I'm going to count 18 grooves. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Okay, so right there is number 18. So I'm going to take and I'm going to mark number 18. All right, this will make life easier for you. So you will have a little mark on each end. So if you look at this one here, you can see I've actually marked this one on each end and then I marked it in the middle. That makes it just really, really easy on you when you use this loom. So I've got it marked. So I'm going to use my fire line. For now, it's going to stay on my spool. And I'm going to take, and on one of the back sides here, you can either use a regular piece of tape, you can use masking tape, you can use painter's tape, whatever you want. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm going to wrap the thread a couple of times around the knob, and then I'm going to take my tape and I'm going to tape that little tail for now. Okay, that way it's out of the way and I don't have to worry about it right this second. So then I'm going to take my thread here and I'm going to come up into the slot right above it. Sandy, yeah, you can use, she says she only has 10-pound smoke. You can warp with it, but don't weft with it, Sandy. Okay, so you can see this is my knob. I've come right up to where that little slit is, and I'm taking and I'm putting my thread in that little slit. Now I'm going to bring it all the way across, and I'm using a firm tension. And because I've already counted, I know that that is exactly across. So I've got it in that little slit, and I'm going to take my thread and I'm going to just wrap it around the knob. So the knob is going to hold it into place. So I'm going to come up at the very, very next slit here, and I'm going to come down, and I'm going to stick it in that very next little slot. And then I'm going to take and I'm going to wrap it around the knob and bring it back up. And each time I come up, I'm going in the very next little slot that's there. Now remember, I have to have 10 of these little pieces for the skinny bracelet. So I'm just going to keep coming up each time. If you look at it, they should be, as the term's tight as a drum, if you ask Scrooge, tight as a drum, or they should kind of look like guitar strings, okay? They should be just a little bit apart here. And each time you come up, you just wrap it, and then you come across to the next side. All right. So I'm going to go until I have all of the little threads that I need. Now, you can see here, when I wrapped it around, it kind of got out of its little slot. So I'm going to reposition it and make sure it stays in that slot. It's easiest to count them if you don't count them while you're doing it. It's easiest to count them right here at the base. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think I've got 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, okay, I have 6. So this will be 7 for me. I'm going to wrap it around. And then 8. Oh, look. You see what happened right there? How it got out of its little slot. So I'm going to just pull it out. Get it in its slot it's supposed to be in there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so this is 7. 8. 9. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. Okay, and then this is 10 for me. Okay, so I have 10. I'm going to double count them. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Double, triple count, whatever you have to do, okay? And then I'm going to wrap this around a couple of times so that I know it's not going to come loose. And then I'm going to take and I'm going to just trim this thread. Now, once I get it trimmed, I'm going to take my little piece of tape. I'm going to take it off for now. I'm just going to kind of stick it here. And then I'm going to tie these 2 threads together. So I'm tying the tail and the start tail and the ending tail together. And if you want to, I mean, you can wrap it around again and then tie it, but you don't have to. We just don't want these to get loose. That's our biggest thing. So what I can do now is I can use that little piece of tape again and just to kind of tape down my little edges here so I don't have to worry about it. And I can get rid of those, you know, kind of longer pieces so that I don't have to worry about it. So at this point, you should be warped. So if you have it warped or you have any questions, that's the best thing. Do any of you have any questions about warping this now? Or are we good? Man, y'all are an easy bunch. Okay, so you're going to need your leather at this point. I had a girl in class this morning. She got ahead of me, and she started putting her leather on. And I told her, I said, oh, no, don't do it that way. And so it's different than what you think it's going to be. So I'm going to take my leather, and I'm going to put my 2 ends together, and I'm going to cut the leather in half. Okay, so now I have 2 pieces of leather. Now for you, your leather is going to be a couple of inches longer on each side than your actual loom. Mine's going to be really long on this little one, but yours is going to be a little bit longer than your loom on each end. We want to try and keep it centered over our loom, Okay, so that means we need to try and keep the same amount of tail on each side. And that's really important in how you're finishing off this piece. You want to make sure you have enough room on each side to finish what you need to do. So this is where that regular tape or masking tape or painter's tape is going to come in handy for you. Oh, and I'll tell you too, this one I forgot to mention. If you feel like your threads aren't tight enough, like you did not work them tight enough, then what I would do, I would take it out. I would not worry about trying to fix it. I would just take it out and redo it. If you feel like, even after you've reworked it, they're still a little loose, you can take a little piece of your masking tape or your painter's tape or whatever, and you can put it right here on the back, and you can kind of press it down tightly right here where your pieces are. You can press it down tightly, and you can see what that does is that pushes these down a little bit, and it makes these even tighter. So if you feel like they're not tight enough, you can do it on this end and on this end. You can also take the bar out. You don't have to leave this bar in, and the original instructions do tell you to take the bar out. The biggest problem I found with taking the bar out, the bar is so hard to get in, it's even harder to get out. So if you try to take the bar out, a lot of times you end up messing up where your strings are anyways. So I guess that's one thing I like about this little baby is you don't have to worry about a bar. But even after you do this, if it still feels loose, you can take the bar out, but I don't suggest taking that bar out. Okay, so let me get me a little bit more of my tape here. The great thing about using something like a masking tape or something like that is that you don't have to worry about it leaving a sticky residue on your leather. If you use regular tape, it's going to leave a little bit of a sticky residue. So this is why I kind of said yesterday that this was optional, because if you don't have any, there's no need sense to go in and spend, you know, whatever painter's tape is now when you can use regular tape. So I'm going to center this over it. Now remember, our first and our last little piece are going to be here. So I start out one link away, just like if it was normal thread. If it looks like that's going to be a little too tight, you can spin it out one more link here. This is going to be movable. We can move this leather, so don't worry about it if it's too close or too far away. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take a piece of my tape, and on one end, I'm going to tape my leather onto the back of it. I'm going to bring it where I want it on this side, treating it just like it's a thread, just like here. And then I'm going to bring it down, and I'm pulling it tight as I bring it down. And then I'm going to take, again, a piece of my tape, and I'm going to tape it. And I'm going to do the same thing with this other side. I'm going to try to kind of keep it even. I'm going to position it. When I'm happy with that, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take my piece of tape, and I'm going to tape one side. And then I'm going to bring it down, and I'm going to tape this side. So it's going to look like a hot mess in the back. All right, so don't worry. We got a hot mess in the back and a party in the front. All right, and that's what you want. It's okay, because all of this ain't going to be here when we finish. I promise. It's going to look beautiful. So because I'm doing something a lot smaller, I'm going to take and cut some of these off. You won't have to worry about it because you won't have a whole lot left over. Now, if you absolutely have no tape or anything like that, you can also use clips, like I said, to clip here, and then here and here to clip that leather in place and keep it nice and tight. But this is what your piece should look like if at this point. If it doesn't, please say, Kelly, it's a hot mess. Please help, something, so I can go over this again. Wow, y'all are a super quiet group today. Okay, so then we're gonna go ahead and get started. Remember, if you're doing the wider version, which is the original 1-inch wide version of the cuff, if you're gonna follow the word or the bead chart, you're gonna start on this yellow line of beads here. If you are going to do the word chart for that one, you are going to start on row 33. Okay, so Jan says she only had Scotch tape or duct tape, but it feels taut. Yes, it will feel taut for you, Jan. The thing is you may just have to kind of fight with a little bit of sticky residue on the back, and that's completely okay. So if you're doing the skinny version, you are going to start on this row here, where so I'm on page 3 of the pattern, and I'm starting on the widest part of a diamond. So that's going to be B, H, G, F, E, 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 F, G, H, B. So then if you're going by the word chart, let's see. You're going to start on row 34. Okay, so if you're doing the skinny one, you're going to start on row 34. And when you look at it, if you've never read one of these charts before, the number in parentheses is the amount of that bead that you're going to pick up. So here I'm going to pick up 1 B, 1 H, 1 G, 1 F, 3 of my E beads, 1 F, 1 G, 1 H, and 1 B. So this is not like peyote stitch where we pick up the first row and then we only pick up a few beads at a time. You're picking up the whole row for every row that you do. So you want to start out with about 2 yards of your thread is how much you want to kind of start out with. If you're comfortable, if you've done looming before and you're comfortable working with more thread, you can definitely work with more thread. But for me, 2 yards is more than enough. So I'm going to thread my needle on. Well, I got an end here. Either I got a bad needle or a bad end, one of the two here. Let me grab me another needle. There we go. Okay, I'm going to put on a stop bead first. So let me find just a random, here we go, random bead. So I'm putting on a stop bead. You want to leave about a 6-inch tail. And then I'm going to go through that bead again so that the thread will wrap around it and be on it just like this. So for the skinny one, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to pick up all the beads I need for my row. So blue, green, yellow, orange, red, 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 orange, yellow, green, and blue. Now, as with anything else, the first row is always the hardest. So if you are right-handed, okay, so if you're right-handed, you are going to take your beads and you are going to bring them under from left to right, just like this. And we are going to put the beads up into their position. If you are left-handed, you are going to take your needle and come from the right to the left underneath, and then we will get our beads into position. So I am right-handed, so I'm going to start over here on the left, and we go under. So I am under my beadwork right now. Now I'm going to see if I can bring this in just a little bit here for you guys. So in between each thread, we need to have a bead. So I let my beads drop all the way down, and we treat this first and this last cord just like thread. So we go ahead, we're going to start in the middle. Okay, so I'm going to start in the middle. I'm not going to start on one end. I'm starting right in the middle. So I'm going to kind of put some beads in place. So I push up and I take the needle and I go over the leather and through my beads. Now I'm making sure that the beads, my needle is put, like the beads are pushed up and the needle is going over these threads. So if you can't get through all of them at one time, that's fine. If you can, whatever you need to do. But once I get to the end, I'm going to go over the leather here on this end. So over the leather, through the beads, over the leather, and you want a thread in between each bead, just like I've got shown here. The first row is the hardest. Once you get that first row in, you're good to go. Okay, and I'm just going to kind of hold my beads in place, and I'm going to pull the thread. Okay, and when you do, you see it's going to kind of bend in just a little bit. Okay, yeah, this will work. All right, let me zoom out just a little bit here, guys. Trying to get my camera position a little better here for you. Okay, so I have this first row put in. So now I'm going to go to the second row. So on the skinny pattern, I started here. So I'm going to work up on this row. So the next row, I'm going to pick up all the beads on this row. So I'm going to pick up an A, B, H, G, F, E, F, G, H, B, A. Do we want that much space between the stop bead and the loom? You can pull the stop bead all the way up. I personally don't like to, but you can pull it all the way up, Jan, if you want to. If you've left a long enough tail, you absolutely can do that. Now, before I even pick up my beads for the next row, I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to go under my piece here. So that way I already know the beads are in place, or the thread's going to be in place when I pull those beads all the way down. You don't have to do it this way. It just works out really well for me to go ahead and put the thread under here so I know when my beads are in place. So let me get my beads picked up here. All right, so I've got my next row. I'm going to pull these beads all the way down. Now my thread's already underneath, so I don't have to worry about taking the needle over, under, doing anything funky like that. I'm going to slide the beads down, push them up into place. I go over the leather, and again, I want to make sure that my beads are kind of pushed up in between those threads, because my needle needs to be, when I go through them, it needs to be over these threads. The beads are not going to fall out if you don't go under those threads, but if you don't, you will see the thread. It will stick out and it won't look good. Okay, so over and over. I'm going to hold these beads in place and I'm going to go ahead and pull. So what you'll notice, just like on a regular wrap bracelet that we would make, our threads on one side are going to be straight. Our threads on the next side are going to be at a little bit of a diagonal, and that's okay. just like a regular wrap bracelet. Now, before I do pick up my next row, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna put my needle under, and then I'm gonna pick up for the beads for the next row. So we're gonna go ahead and pick those beads up. Okay, so then I'm gonna let my beads drop all the way down. I'm gonna get those beads in place here. And again, I'm gonna push up. Okay, Tammy, if you are going by the word chart, you are working backwards. So you will work 33, 32, 31, 30. You are working back to number 1. Okay, so we got our beads in. We pull back, we pull. Okay, and let me zoom out and kind of show you so that I can answer Tammy's question in case anybody else has that question. So on your bead chart, the very top, this is row 1, and it works all the way down, and then you go to the next chart on page 2, and it starts at the top and goes all the way down, and then here and work down. Since we're starting in the middle, we're going to work up this way, so just a little bit, and then when we come back to the first page, we're going to start at the bottom and work our way up to the top. So Tammy, if you are starting on your word chart, if you are starting on row 30, okay, so row 34, the next row you'll work is 33, and you will continue working upward. But unless you just have like a 9-inch wrist, you're not going to work all the way up. You're going to work, you know, almost to the end, but not all the way up to the top. So what let's do, let's continue to thread on our rows, and let's work a little bit on our rows and get some bead work done. So if you don't know, I think it's kind of obvious, but I don't want to assume anything. So far, I have 1, 2, 3 rows. So the good thing, if you're using your picture chart, you can go 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to start here on this next row. You can also look at your pattern because you're starting to see the pattern. You can kind of look, my original row, if I didn't have this, had 3 E's on it. So I can just go 1, 2, 3 and know that this is my next row. So are we all good to keep just stringing on beads? Or do you need me to go over stringing our beads and setting them in just a little bit more? Once you have a few rows set in, if you feel like this tail thread is getting in your way, you can take your needle and you can get rid of this tail thread. So I'm going to put in a few more rows so that I can show you how we get rid of this tail thread, because it's the exact same way. If you need to add thread or get rid of thread, it's going to be the same way. So I'm going to put on a few more rows here. So okay, now if you want to, what I like to do is I like to put a little mark next to my row so that I know I've done that row. So Jan, if you started counting down, like if you started at 33 and you went to 34, 35, 36, that's fine too. You know, whatever works easiest for you, do that. Just make sure you get these beads pushed up so that way you don't skip any of your little threads. So the first couple of rows of this can seem hard or daunting because of the fact that every row changes, but you soon realize that you soon start to see the pattern and you're able to kind of rely more on sight rather than having to follow the pattern as much. And another great thing about this pattern is you pretty much know immediately if you have put a wrong bead in place. So I've got a couple of rows here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this stop bead off of this tail thread that I've got. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to thread a needle onto this short tail thread. Okay, now let me kind of zoom in here for a minute. Okay, so right now my thread is coming out underneath this row that I'm doing. So I'm going to take the tail thread and I'm going to come over the piece of leather here and I'm going to work back through, but now I'm not going to go all the way to the end where the leather's at. I'm just going to go through the last bead, but not through the over or under that leather. And I'm going to pull it through. Now I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to come back through the next row. And this is a great time if you missed a thread. This is a great time to kind of push it up and go through it again. But I've gone through a few beads there. Again, I'm not going through the whole row on this one. And I popped it enough through so where you don't see that little thread there. And so I've come here, so now I may go backwards like this. However I can do it to get rid of the thread and know that it's secure and it's not going to come out is basically what I want to do. And this will be the same way when we cut all of our pieces off of the loom. This will be the same way that we get rid of threads because we'll have to get rid of all these threads. So it's the same way of how we get rid of them. So I'm confident that this thread is not going to come out. So I'm going to go ahead and cut off the little excess parts here. Okay. So that now that tail thread is gone, I don't have to worry about that tail thread, and I can just continue on through my next row. I have a little space there. I think it's actually, there we go. Okay, so that's how we get rid of that tail thread. So let's continue working for a little while, doing some more rows, because I want to get to somewhere where I can show you how to do the decrease and then what to do to start and end and all that good stuff. So like I said, we got a lot to talk about today. I'd love to kind of know how everybody's doing so far. Everybody got it loomed up and starting to work, or some of you just kind of watching the first go round? Libby's still fighting the first row. I understand, Libby. That first row is the hardest. Libby, if it helps, go through one bead at a time. Once you get the beads in there, go through one bead at a time. You don't have to try and go through them all at one time. Go through 1 or 2 beads at a time and pull the thread all the way through, and then get the next 2 beads in a row and go all the way through. Don't let that part stress you out. Just do 1 or 2 beads at a time, getting them into place, and it makes it much easier than trying to do the whole thing. Yeah, in my e-class, or my class actually here in the store this morning, I was showing them how to do the decrease, and they were like, "Man, you make it look so easy how to do it." And I thought, well, yeah, I guess the first time I did them, I struggled too. So don't worry. It's part of the process. The more you loom, the better you're going to get at it, just like anything else. Okay, so as I work down, this is my last row for this actual page. I've worked up to the top of my page, and this is the last row. So when I go to do the next row, all I'll have to do is go to the bottom of the previous page and start working upwards. So that'll be the good thing about that. Okay. So, and you can see I've already got half of a diamond made. So I finished up to here. So then this was page 3. So I'm just going to flip back to page 2, and I'm going to start down here at the bottom. Now I'm basically going to do 1 diamond, and I guess, I don't know what this is going to be. This is going to be a baby, a baby bracelet, I guess. But what I want to talk to you right now, we're about an hour into class, and I want to talk to you about decreasing on the loom. You can see here from this example that I've already got started, you can see how the decrease looks, okay? We're wanting to just kind of bring it in a little bit down to 3 beads. We don't want to go smaller than 3, so 3 beads is it. If you're doing the skinny version, it's not going to take as many beads to do a decrease. If you're doing the wider version, it's going to take you a lot more rows to do your decrease. So you can see here, if I hold it to the first decrease, you can see how many more rows it's going to take to do your decrease. So you want to think about that as well. Basically, every row that we do, we're going to take out 1 bead on the end first, 1 bead on each end. The next decrease row, we'll take off 2 beads on each end, and 3 beads, and 4 beads, and 5 beads, until we get down to only having 3 beads in a row. So for the next row, I already know if I'm going to do my decrease, so I'm to that point, I'm not going to use this bead or this bead, okay? I will be only using these beads here. On the next row, I know that I've got to take 2 beads off each end, so that gets rid of this one and this one, and this one. The next row is 3 beads, so I go 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay. The next row is 4, so 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to do it till I only have 3 beads left on the end. So if I'm doing the thicker version, where is that pattern? Lord help y'all, I've just been sitting in this one space. What have I done with it? Oh, good grief. Oh, here we go. Okay. So if you are doing the thicker pattern, and let's say you get to this row, and you say, okay, this is where I need to start my decrease. So I finished this row, okay, so I'll loom this whole row, and then so the next row, I know I've got to get rid of 1 bead on each end. The next row is 2. The next row is 3. The next row is 4. And I just have to keep narrowing it down. So 3, 4, 5. I have to keep narrowing it down until I get to that 3 bead row. The next row is 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so right now I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I got 5 beads, so I got to decrease a little bit more. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So now I have 3 beads left there. So you can see I'm going to have to do a lot more decrease in here than what I would have to do, say like here where I did my decrease on my bracelet that I've got. So here, there we go. So that's what you're going to have to pay attention, that you've got enough room to do your decrease. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start the decrease, and I'm going to zoom in again because this is really, really important when you are learning to do your decrease. So let me just see here. Okay, so right now my thread is coming out of the green bead on the row that I just finished. I can't just take my needle and come right back through that green bead, because if I do, the green bead basically could, pop out of place. So what I have to do is I have to go under, so I got to go under the leather and through the green bead. So I'm going to flip it around here just so it's easier. So I'm going to go under the leather and then through just the green bead. Okay, so under the leather through my first bead of that row, because I'm getting rid of that bead on the next row. So I'm going to make sure that my little leather here or my thread looks good, and I'm there. Okay, now I'm going to take my needle. This is going to sound really counterintuitive, but I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to come right down through this little slot right here for this first one. I'm going to take my needle and come down through that slot because I have to be coming out underneath to add the next row. So I'm coming out underneath and I'm ready to start the next row. So my next row, I'm going to go ahead and thread my beads on. Okay, so once I get my beads on for the next row, I'm going to bring them down. Now remember, we're not putting a bead on the first or the last. So when we set these up, make sure to set them up where they need to be. Just like this. Now, I assume you've already guessed this. I can't just take my needle and come back through that row. Because what's going to happen if I do, I'm going to go over this leather and I'm going to, have some threads crunched up against each other. So what I have to do is I have to take my needle and I've got to come up through this first little section here, okay? The bead where there's no bead. So I have to come up through there and then go through the beads of my row. And I push those up, make sure they're all popped into place. And it's going to look just like this. I'm going to hold those beads as I pull. And this is what we've got. Now, again, we can't take our needle and come back through the green bead because that's not going to work. And we can't take and go under the leather and through the green bead or you're going to see a little space here, this very first space again. Or I can take my needle and I can simply go under this first thread. So let me hold it this way. It might be a little bit easier for you to see. I can go under the first thread here. So I'm coming out of the green, my thread's coming out on top. So I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to go under this first thread. Sandy, what do you say in 5 rows? Okay, once I'm under that thread, then I'm going to go through that green bead again. Okay. Oh, you've got 5 rows done, I think is what you mean. All right, so my thread is coming out of the green bead here. So now I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to come through this empty slot here right above that green bead. Okay, so I'm going in my empty slot here. So I go through the green slot so that I'm coming out underneath and I'm ready to start my next row. I'm going to thread the beads on for my next row. Okay, I have my beads on. I'm going to let these drop all the way down. And again, remember for this row, we're not going to have 2 beads on each end. So I'm going to have 2 empty slots on the front and 2 empty slots on, so 2 empty slots here, 1, 2, 2 empty slots here, 1, 2. Again, I can't take the thread and come this way, because if I do, what's going to happen is I'm going to, see thread. So I'm going to come up through the empty box right here after the orange, so right here. And I'm going to go through this row of beads. Oh, I know, Ruth. The first time I learned this, I had to really, really, really do it over and over again to kind of get it. When you get to that point, Ruth, and you're decreasing, it will be a lot easier for you to kind of see and understand. It's a little hard, I know, when you're working on your regular bracelet, and I'm trying to talk to you about decreasing here. But so you can see I'm here. Now I'm going to take my needle, and again, I can't come right back through the orange bead, or it'll pop it out of place, and I can't come this way because then you're going to see all those threads. So I have to take my needle, and I'm going to go under the second thread. So this time it's not the first thread, it's the second thread. Okay? Just like this. So I go under the second thread. I'm going to pull it through. Okay? So that the thread is under there. And now I'm going to go through that orange bead. The reason we're going through the first bead each time for the row is because this helps us to be able to decrease. Okay, so now I'm going to take my needle, and I'm going to go take it just down through this empty spot here right above my orange bead. And then I'll take the needle and pull. So it's underneath and it's ready to go. So then I do my next row. And again, this time we won't have 3 beads on each side of our row. So we need to have 3 empty slots before our row and 3 empty slots after our row. So you can see 1, 2, 3 empty spots, and 1, 2, 3 empty spots. So I'm going to take my needle, and I'm going to come up through the little empty spot right after my white bead here. Again. Okay. And I'm going to just kind of hold on to it and pull it through. Just helps to keep everything tight. Now I'm going to take the needle, and I'm going to come down through my little empty hole here after the white bead. Okay, so is everybody still with me, or did you lose me? Okay, or I'm just going to take my needle and go under that third thread. Okay. All right, can everybody still see me? If you can see me, can you please give me a thumbs, say I can see you or something like that, so that I know, because my actual computer froze up for a minute and I'm not sure. Okay, Ruth says she can see me. Perfect. Okay, so my thread is coming up here. Okay, so now I'm going to go through the white bead here. So that first bead on the row. Okay, good. Yeah, because my computer froze up and I thought, uh-oh, did I just lose everybody? Okay, so see, I'm coming out of the white, so now I'm going to take my needle and I'm just going to come down through this little hole here right above the white, and I'm just kind of sliding the needle through, so that way my thread is down here on the bottom where it needs to be. So now I've only got 1 row left, so that's for me, that's going to be an A, B, and an A. So let's see. So A, B, and an A. So this time I had to decrease by 4 beads, so that means I'm not going to have 4 beads on either end of my row. So I'll let these drop down. Okay, I take the needle and I'm going to come up through the empty hole here right after my row. And then I'm going to go through the beads of my row. Now, here's the deal. When you finish this row, this is the last row for this end of the bracelet. If you don't have a lot of thread left, then what you can do is you can just get rid of this thread. No worries. We get rid of it exactly like we did a few minutes ago with our little tail thread here. If we have a whole lot of thread left, then I can take that thread and I can just roll it up on a little card or a little bobbin, and I can hold on to this thread. But since I've got such a small piece that I'm going to be working on, I'm going to use this thread and I'm just going to stitch down to do this second half. Well, no, actually, I'm going to completely get rid of this thread because I want to show you how to start your second half if you're unsure of that. So all I'm going to do now is I'm just going to work this thread to get rid of it, just like if I had a little short tail thread and I was trying to end it. Good grief. So I would love to kind of get a consensus for those of you who are watching live. Are you doing this skinny version or are you doing the regular version of this piece? So Libby, Tammy, Ruth, Sandy, Jan, if you guys will type in the chat for me when you finish your row. Ruth said trying the wide but may switch. Libby's doing the wide. I'm just doing the skinnier one just because, like, that's going to be mine personally, just because I don't like that wide of a bracelet. So I just like to use a little bit of a skinnier one. Tammy said she's doing the skinny one. Okay, so this is what I've got so far. So let's say I've got half my bracelet done like I've got here on this one. Okay, so this is, for me, I know that I am pretty much going to, when we started right here in the middle, I know that I have 5 diamonds is normally what I'm going to need for the bracelet. So I can go ahead and I can, you know, decrease this. And when I get to the next side, if I need a little bit more, I can just measure it out and I can add more or less depending on what I'm going to need. And that's what you'll do as well. So I've got a new piece of thread here and I'm going to put a stop bead on it. So I bring it down, leave myself a tail, put that stop bead. And so that now, if I started earlier on this row, I'm going to work down now. So I'm going to work, so 34 was where I started. I worked 35, 36, 37, and so forth. So I'm just going to go ahead and pick up the next row. So that's going to be this row here. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up those beads. So A, B, H, G, F, E, F, E, and A. Okay, so I have my beads for my next row, and I'm going to work this just like I did in the original beginning. I'm just going to come under. I've left that stop bead on there, and I'm going to come back up, get this sucker into position, and do the row just like I normally would. The great thing about putting these beads into position, they're a little bit easier to do than our original first row because you already have a row in place that you don't have to worry about. So it's a little bit better of a guide for you to deal with as you're kind of working down your row. Okay, so I'll go ahead and I'll pull that through. And again, if you want, you can pull that stop bead all the way up. I don't like to, you know, and even at this point, I kind of take the stop bead and I pull it out a little bit further and don't really worry about it. Oh, gotcha, Sandy. Okay, so then I'll just come under. I just picked up this row, so then I'll just go to the next row. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick up my beads. So I'm just going to continue to work my rows here until I kind of finish out the diamond. I guess, I don't know what I'm going to make. I'm going to make a complete diamond here so that I can show you decreasing again. We decrease on both ends, and it's exactly the same on both ends. But the good thing about me sampling a little tiny small piece like this is that you will be able to get to see both of those done a little bit quicker. To me, if you're doing the skinny version of this bracelet, it goes a little bit quicker than the wider version. Okay. And I've got a little space here that I don't, good grief, that I don't like. So I'm just going to kind of pick this thread out and loosen it up a little bit and move that row up just a little bit and then pull the thread back tight. So if you got a little space there and you don't like it, you can fix it that way. Okay, so I'm gonna just again slide my beads down and just continue on. And like I said, I love this pattern because if you mess up and you pick up the wrong bead, you always can tell kind of immediately because you see it. Well, I guess I shouldn't say that though, because that's why I ended up taking the earring and cutting the earring off and chunking it, because I did miss. I picked up, like right around in here somewhere, I picked up the same row instead of picking up the next row, and I did not notice it till I had that thing completely finished, and I was like, oh, forget this mess. I ain't dealing with that. Okay. As you work, if your leather starts to loosen up a little bit, especially when you get down near like one end of your piece, you can untape it on the back and pull it back tighter and tape it back. Sometimes just just I guess the art of pulling it tight kind of loosens it up a little bit. So you can reposition the leather if you need to as well. So don't think that you have to keep using it when it's super loose. Yep, Sandy, I love it. Okay, so for me, because I'm making this symmetrical, I'm going to finish out one complete diamond here. For me, I know that this is the last row that I need to do before I start my decrease. For you, it may not be exactly symmetrical, and that's okay. That's why we tried to start completely in the center and kind of work our way out on each end. But if you got a little bit off, that's all right. Don't freak out on me over it. Let me find my original sample here. Okay, so I think this side here was the original. No, this was the original side that I did. I started again in the middle and I worked to the end and I did my little decrease and I was happy. When I got to the other end, I needed just a little bit more than what I had here. So you can see I just ended up, you know, going a little bit further, and that's okay. You don't have to worry about it being completely symmetrical. If you want it completely symmetrical, you can do that, but then what you would need to do is you would need to add some sort of an extender. But honestly, when you wear it, no one is ever going to know that it's not 100% symmetrical. And so it's going to be completely up to you. But like I said, I'm doing this one because I don't know what I'm going to turn it into. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to work on my decrease for this one. So let me kind of zoom in a little bit and get you down here a little bit better so you can see. So I've finished that last row. And I remember this is where I've got to go under the leather and through my green bead. Now I'm going to have to flip this just because it's easier for me. But I'm going to do that, and I'm going to go through just that first bead there of that last row. And I'm going to pull the thread. Oh my goodness, I don't know if y'all could hear my stomach just now or not. That was so funny. I guess it's telling me it's way past lunchtime. Okay, so I'm here. Now I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to go down into this first hole here where that green bead is. I'm going to pull the needle all the way through. So it's ready to do its decrease. So I'm going to pick up my row. And remember, I'm not going to have a bead before, a bead before or a bead after. So I want to set them up where they need to be. And I'm going to bring my needle up into this last hole here where my bead is missing. And then I'm going to go through my row. Okay. And I'll pull it on through. Okay. Now I'm going to take the needle and I'm going to come under just this first thread right here. Okay, so just that first thread. And I'll go through the green bead. Okay. Now to start the next row, I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to go in between right here in my little open spot right there above the green bead. I'm going to take the needle and I'm going to come down through that bead and I'm going to pull it through. Okay, so then I'll add the next row. F, E, D, C, D, E, and F. Okay, so I'll bring this down. And again, this row is not going to have 2 beads before it or 2 beads after it. So we have to get it set up exactly like it needs to be. Then we're going to take the needle and we're going to come up through the empty space right after my little orange bead here. So it's going to be the empty hole. And I pull it through. And then I take the needle and I'm going to go through this row of beads here. Okay, all the way through, just like that. I'm going to hold these beads in place. And now remember, this time, instead of going under the first thread, I'm going to go under the second thread. Because here's my bead, and there's a thread right next to it. If I try to go above that thread, I'm just going to pop the bead out of place. So it's got to go under that thread. So I got under the bead or under the thread and then through the orange bead. So I go through the bead and I pull it through. Now, once I've got that pulled through, I'm going to go through the space right there at the orange bead. So my needle is underneath and ready to start the next row. So then I'm going to pick up the beads for the next row. And I will let these beads drop all the way down. And remember, this row we're going to be missing 3 beads at the front and 3 beads at the back. So we get the beads into position there. So we've got 3 empty holes on each side. I'm going to take the needle up into that first empty space next to my white bead there. And then I will go through those beads. Pull this through. I'm going to take the needle now and I'm going to go under the 3rd thread. So 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so just under that 3rd thread and pull. Then I go through the white bead. And then I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to slide it down into the space right at the white bead. There we go. Okay, so now I'm working on the last row, which for me is going to be ABA. So A, B, A. And I'm going to thread these beads on and I'm going to let them drop down. And again, this time we're not going to have 4 beads before or 4 beads after. So we center it and I'm going to take my needle up through the open space here right before the last bead, or right after the last bead, I should say. And then I'm going to go through those 3 beads. Okay, so for now, what I'm going to do, oh, and look, I'm glad I did this. I messed up right here. My thread, I ended up coming up through the 3rd hole instead of the 4th hole. So you see, I've got thread right here, and we don't want that. So to fix that, the easiest way to do it is to take your needle off and grab a hold of that thread and pull it out. And then I'm going to pull it out here to the bottom. Well, Ruth, good job. Ruth got her first row on. After this, it gets easier, Ruth. You keep on going, sister. You got this. Okay, there we go. Okay, so for now, once I have finished, I'm just going to take the needle and I'm going to take this working thread and I'm just going to leave it. So let me kind of pull up here. And so I'm going to leave this long thread. Whoops. And then I'm going to take and I'm going to get rid of any tails that I have at this point. So any thread tails like this, I'm going to get rid of. Oh my gosh, there it goes again. Y'all, I am so sorry. My poor stomach is saying it is lunchtime. So I'm just going to stitch through and get rid of this tail. And then comes the fun slash unfun part of it. The first time I ever seen this done, I immediately panicked. I was like, oh my God, what is this woman doing to my loom? I took a loom class with Cindy Kennerson 2 years ago at Bead and Button, and she taught us how to do a decrease on a pair of earrings. And when I seen her do this, like I said, I about freaked out. So look at my completed bracelet, y'all. I've got the completed baby bracelet done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, and now I'm going to take all the tape off the back. So this takes the what's holding the suede or your leather. It's going to, you know, let it go, and that's fine. You're just going to take any tape that you had off the back. Okay. And this lets go again of the leather. And right now, the only thread that I should have left at this point, besides what's on my warp, is my working thread. And I'm just going to kind of leave it to the side. Now, don't freak out on me, because it's the first time I seen this done, I freaked out. I was like, no, she didn't. I grab a hold here at the knob, and we cut. And then we're going to do the same thing on this end. If you can slide it off the knob if that side slides out, and then you can cut it. Okay, so now it's completely off my loom, and I can set my loom to the side, and I have all of these wild, crazy threads. It sort of looks like a spider at Halloween. So now comes the tedious, fun slash unfun part of getting rid of all these threads. Now, Cindy's way of getting rid of all these threads, like she would never have a double-sided piece, like where you could see the front and back side. You would only get to see the front side, because she basically twists all of these threads together. She tucks them on the back and puts a little piece of tape on the back, and then puts some foundation on the back of it. I don't want that. We can't really do that on our bracelet. So basically what I do is I start on one side, and I'm going to get rid of all the threads on this one side, and I start in one corner. So I'm just going to thread a needle onto one end of my, one end here, and I'm going to start working this thread down through my piece. Now I want to be careful as I work, and I want to go through as many different beads as I can to kind of get rid of this thread. If I focus on stitching all of these threads through a few beads at a time, those beads are going to get full really fast. So I've got that one through, so now I'm going to take and I'm going to cut it and get rid of it. So now I'm going to go through the thread on this side. So I work side to side until I get to the center. And I'm going to work these threads and get these threads done and taken care of. Believe me, I know that this is tedious and this is not fun. But this is, I guess, what you have to deal with when using a normal loom. Now, like I said, you can do this on the Rix loom. The only thing with doing it on the Rix loom is you can't really, adjust your size once you've got it barred out. Whereas this project, you have real control over the size that you want, and you don't have to worry about it. So then you just snip. So I go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Now you don't want to do that to your long thread. That just kind of needs to stay out to the side for now. But then I'm going to take the next thread and I'm going to thread it on. And you can also use a big eye needle for this if you don't like threading and unthreading and rethreading and all of that good stuff. You can use a big eye needle to do this, and it's pretty easy as well, just to do it with the big eye needle. I have about 1.5 diamonds. I think I'm getting the powder now. Well, good. I am glad to hear it, Tammy. Okay, so... And you can see each set of beads that I go, or each thread that I work, I'm going through different beads. Because like I said, if you try to go through all the same beads, it's going to get really tight and it's not going to work, and you're going to get really frustrated and you're going to send me nasty emails, and then I'm going to get really frustrated. So just take your time. And the great thing is if you have, you're doing the whole bracelet instead of a baby diamond like I'm doing here. The really great thing about doing it that way is you have plenty of beads to work your thread down through. Doing a much smaller piece like this, the problem is, having all of these beads, or not having all of those beads, I guess I should say. And instead of getting rid of, I guess you could, if you wanted to, you could get rid of all the threads on one side and finish off this side, and then you could do the other side. That is always an option if you want to do it that way. I guess for me, I just like knowing once I finish getting rid of the beads on this side, and if I go ahead and get rid of the other beads on the other side, then I don't have to worry about getting rid of beads. I can just finish the project. But you can do it however you want to. Whatever works easiest and best for you. I don't really worry about these threads coming undone, the ones that I'm working with, because you have been back and forth through these beads, and then we still have to use our working thread to finish with the leather. So that is a really great thing about this specific project. You don't have to be too awfully picky about it. We just want it to look good and wear good. Okay, so I've got four strings left here on this end. Good job, Libby. Libby says she's got some rows done. Yeah, I love this color palette. And it's so funny. This is not normally a color palette that I do. And I did this palette, or I did this bracelet. I posted a video of me doing it on my Instagram, and I got the most comments on an Instagram post I've ever gotten on this bracelet. And everybody loved the colors in this palette. And I thought, well, maybe I need to use these colors more often. Because people was just full of good compliments about this color, this pattern. Okay, guys, I'm almost there. I got 3 threads left. Hallelujah. No, I got 2 threads left. That's my little tail thread there. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these 2 threads, and then I got this side. And if some of your threads or your beads along the edge of your decrease get a little wonky, that's okay. Don't worry about it, because we will fix that in this next step. So don't fret. Okay, so here we go. I've got all of my threads finished now except for my one long tail thread that I had on this end. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to rethread. This is why I do not like to use smoke fire line. Look at my hands, they look terrible. So I'm going to go ahead and thread this on. And I'm going to stitch back down to come out of this row here, my first decrease row. I'm going to stitch back through the beads to come out of that row. And voila. Okay, so I'm coming out of the first decrease row. So just like our threads are here, we're going to have thread wrapped around each side of the leather. So my thread is coming out towards the front. So I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to go under this leather and I'm going to go straight back through that row again. So that when I pull, and you want to pull it tight, and you want to make sure that the thread kind of goes up here where it's supposed to. And so we pull it tight. And when we pull it tight, you see it kind of pulls in there. Now I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to go under the leather, and I'm going to go through this whole row. If you can get it through. You may not be able to get it through the whole row. And if you can't, don't fret. It's okay. But when you pull, now that pulls your two pieces of leather closer. So I'm going to go under the leather and through the next row. So under the leather and straight through my row. Okay, and when I do this, now that pulls the leather even closer. So my thread is coming out over the top of the leather. So I'm going to go under the leather and through this row again. And again, at this point, these rows, especially if you're using a size a 10 needle, if you're using a 12, it's not going to be as bad. But if you're using a 10, it's going to be really tight getting through these beads. So you can see now how this is looking. Okay, so I'm going to go around the leather and through the next row. I'm going to go around the leather and through the row again. Making sure that I pull that thread. And then I have one more row to go, so I go around the leather, through the row, and then around the leather and through the row. So now the decrease on this end is complete. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to reinforce, especially this last row. I'm going to reinforce it a couple of times, and each time I go through, I don't want to catch the leather like I did there. But each time I go through, I'm just going to wrap around the leather and then through the beads and wrap around the leather. We just want a really, really nice, tight spot here. Okay, now when that row is nice and complete and it's tight and I don't have to worry about it, then I'm going to take the needle and I'm going to put a few half-hitch knots in here. So I'm going to go under the threads, leave myself a little loop, and pull through. Okay, then I might go around into the next row and then go through all the beads on that row if I can. There we go. And then I may do a little half hitch knot on this side. At this point, the good thing is you've been through these beads enough. You really, really, honestly don't have to freak out about it coming apart possibly. Because like I said, you've been through them plenty of times. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I've gone through another row and then I am going to cut this thread so that this side is done. Now, like I said, at this point, I can go ahead and I can finish out this side if I want to. So to do this side, I make a knot. I thread my button on one piece of the leather, and then I make another knot. Now, if you had some larger size beads here, you could make this a little longer and use some little dangly beads off here if you wanted to, but it's completely up to you. So that is how I would add my button on this side. But like I said, you don't have to add the clasp yet. You can go ahead and finish off both ends. I still haven't decided what this is going to be yet, so I'm going to leave it be. So on this end, what I've got to do is I've got to get rid, just like I did here, of all these threads. So let me get my needle going here. Okay, and just like I did the other end, I've got to start stitching through and getting rid of tail threads. So, you know, if you want to go ahead and finish the one side, so you're like, hallelujah, I'm done with that part, you can do that. This would be pretty just to put on top. Make a knot here and here, and then finish it out with some cord ends or something like that. I might have to do that with this one. That would be really pretty. I was just thinking about that. Be a little bit of something different. Well, good job, Ruth. I'm glad you're getting some experience using these little small beads. Now, for those of you who are doing the wider version of this bracelet, make sure, like I've been saying, that you go through, you know, not all the same beads to do this part, because especially because of your wide rows, you're going to have more threads you're going to have to deal with than using, you know, this little smaller piece. Okay, so I am working on getting my last thread done here. And if you had enough thread left over at the beginning that you were able to leave a tail thread, then that's wonderful. But if you didn't, it's okay. I'm going to show you how that you can, you know, we're going to just add thread and finish out this piece. So don't worry if you're not able to leave extra thread. Okay, so I wasn't able to leave extra thread on this one. You see, I've got it like this. So I need a new piece of thread. So I've got a piece here left. And what I'm gonna do is, instead of starting on one end, I'm gonna start kind of here in the middle. And I'm gonna come through some beads. And I'm gonna leave enough tail thread that I can kind of hang on to right now. And then I'm gonna stitch my way to come out of this last, or this first row of decrease here that I've got. Okay, so I'm gonna wrap this around. Okay. Okay, so again, I'm coming out of my first little decrease row here. I'm going to go around the leather and through my row again. And you can see when I pull that, it's already going to pull that leather in. Now I'm going to go around the leather and straight through this row again and pull. So it's decreased in. Now I'm going to go around the leather. I'm going to go through, straight through the row, my next row. Around the leather, and I'm going to go through that row again. And each time I'm pulling it tight. Around the leather and through the next row. Around the leather, through the same row. And then around the leather and through the last row. And again, on this side, we're going to reinforce it several times. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put a 1/2 hitch knot in here. And then I'm going to stitch through my row of beads again. And then I may put a 1/2 hitch knot on this side. and then go around the leather and through the next row. And kind of do whatever you want to, completely up to you at this point. And then I'm going to trim my long thread right here. Now I still have just this little thread here that I started this new thread with. So I'll just thread my needle on, and then I'll thread through a few beads and then trim this tail thread off. So that now my beadwork is complete. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is trying to think. Oh, my bead bag isn't up here. Okay, so I'm gonna put a knot here on this end. Okay, and I'm gonna kind of pull it up through here. Okay. Yep. I don't know if I'm going to leave that one or not. I may play with this design a little bit and then shoot you guys a picture of what I did with this one. I've got some new melon beads that have a larger hole in them that will go over both pieces of leather. So I don't know. I may play with that and see. But I put the knot here again for my button. You can see how the button is. And then on the other end, I put the knot, and I measured out the length that I needed that I could fit my button in easily. And you can see then there I just made a loop on that end. So that is how you complete your loom bracelet. So I'm going to turn the camera around. So guys, I hope you enjoyed learning how to do decreases on the loom. It's totally different. Up until I took the class last year on a pair of earrings, I didn't even know that you could do a decrease on a loom. I was quite surprised. But it was a fun bracelet. It really is a fun bracelet to do. And like I said, you can do it on all different types of looms, whatever you want to do. It's just a nice, fun project. And you can loom this, again, without the leather, like we talked about in the beginning. So guys, I hope that you enjoyed yourself. I would love to see pictures of what you've completed. So if you will, shoot me a picture or post it on your social media or whatever you want to do. So that way, I can see what you've been doing with it. And so I have started listing my October/November classes on my website, and I do have a good amount of e-classes going on the website. So if you go to offthebeadedpathbeadstore.com, you click on the classes, you will see e-classes and in-store classes there. I'm doing a lot of fun ones, and I hope that you'll consider doing another one with me again. So guys, I hope you had a good time. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.